Welcome to Chatting with Casey with your host, Casey Palmer.
2019's Life on the 3.5 Chapter 2, Being Black in the Great White North.
Welcome to Chatting with Casey, the podcast that's all about family, food, fashion, and faith, and travel, and tech, and trying to build an identity for yourself in a nation that's prided itself on having everyone come as they are, while also lumping them together into boxes that are easy to identify. Let that sink in for a moment. At the same time, while we're happy to rep where we're from, rocking the colorful flags of everywhere from Jamaica to Botswana and back again, where does that leave the Black Canadian? As a first-generation Black Canadian born just outside Toronto in Mississauga, Ontario, I was often made to feel somewhat less Black by the fact I wasn't from the motherland. Something not exactly under my control, nor something I was looking to change. It meant less respect for my peers and eye rolls for my parents. There were things I'd never fully understand because I didn't come from where they came from. But enough time and a couple trips back to Jamaica that were long overdue, I think my parents and the friends and family around them came to eventually realize that we're not living in a new Jamaica. We're in a different land entirely with its own sets of rules and regulations. For the new generation of kids born and raised in the frozen north, we needed a new rule book on what it meant to be a Black Canadian. But that, my friends, is no small feat, with a culture made of dozens of nations, languages, and cultural backgrounds. While we didn't exactly assimilate to Canada, as many left-leaning politicians would be more than happy to remind us, it has meant starting from scratch, creating our own subculture that's not quite island, not quite Black American, but a little something else entirely. Now, I might not be one to speak. While I am indeed one of the 1.2 million Black people who call Canada their home, there are so many factors that shape one's Black Canadian experience and what it will look like. Where you live, your heritage, whether the people around you treat being Black as something worth celebrating or something constantly hated. I can't speak for the entirety of a people so divided by default, but I hope to use my story to further our struggle for strength. By its very nature, our culture should be divided. Just look at what happened to the Babylonians when God afflicted them with a multitude of languages. But with every passing year, we find ways to unite and keep improving what we do. And so, for the second piece in Live from the 3.5, I'd like to take a page of a Black Canadian experience for my own book and share a talk I gave in 2018's Black History Month in association with Toronto's East Enders Against Racism group. It helped resonate with some and enlighten others. I hope you can see a bit of yourself reflected in it, no matter how much or how little of your experience it happens to reflect. So sit down, relax, and keep those eyes and ears open. It's always interesting being Black in the Great White North, and hopefully this episode will show you that.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. This day has not been at all how I envisioned it. I planned to come with like a nice haircut, shave, suit, and all that, but as you can see, work clothes. And I'm wearing pink for Pink Shirt Day, for like Pink Shirt Day number 1 because there's 2 of them, and our school is recognizing the second one and not the first one, but that's okay. But yeah, so bullying is a bad thing, therefore pink shirt. That's why I'm wearing it. There we go. I know some of the people in the crowd already. For those of you who do know me, thank you for coming out and supporting. I'm wholly surprised that any of you came to actually listen to any words out of my mouth because you should know better. However, for everyone else, Casey Palmer, you heard the bio. I write and talk and do things, and these papers in my hand are the speech I'll be giving tonight. Normally I'll be in here, but job plus blog plus 2 kids, age 4 and 2 plus life. I just printed it out. I'm just gonna go with it, but I have it like semi-memorized, so you'll see eyes darting down, darting up, darting down, darting up, and just go with it. Pretend it didn't happen. So the talk I'm giving tonight, I know I see some littler people in the audience, so I don't want to make it too long and too onerous because I know my son's attention spans are non-existent. So I want to make sure that it's engaging and that I can get it out and hopefully we all get something from it. So hope you're ready. Good? Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool? Okay. Normally I have a podium, so I'm going to just hold and we'll go with it. So, one thing you'll often hear at the end of February from anyone involved from putting together any sort of Black History Month activity is that they're tired. Not just tired from trying to cram all this stuff into the shortest and often coldest month of the year, but tired from having to tell the same story year after year after year. Lots of things have changed since, 400 years ago, 40 years ago, 4 years ago, but lots haven't. There's a lot of things that we continue to have to deal with year over year, and you try to push the needle a bit, you try to push that narrative slightly, but the more things change, the more they can often seem the same. And Black History Month is a weird month in a certain way because we tend to focus on two elements of it more than the other one. Like the Black part, given, that's happening, we talk about that. The history, we talk a lot about the history. We talk about everyone who's come before, everything that's happened, everything that's got us to this point. But then after that, what? Do we not talk about what's happening today, what's happening in the future? We just kind of stay back there without looking that way at all. And it's weird because now we're in a bit of a quandary where the images we see on TV, what's given to us in movies and the media, and despite nearly 25 years of celebrating Black history for 4 weeks a year, we're still a long way from finding the happy ending we're looking for with our story. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Casey Palmer, and I consider myself grossly underqualified to tell you about the Black Canadian experience. Well, let me explain. So, one of the things I often focus on in my talks and in my writing is the idea of intergenerational growth. As far as I know, because there's only so many years of records, my story starts in Jamaica. My grandmothers were there. One of them started from more of a meager upbringing, and one of them started dirt poor. And they had to do what they could in order to raise families. They, would work whatever small jobs they could find. They'd rely on their community. But eventually, they were both quite ambitious, and they found their way to Canada, where they could, take that dream and expand it further on who it is they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. And even here again, they took what jobs they could find, they did what they could. And over time, they built lives and homes for themselves here in Toronto. Now, that said, there's been no shortage of the horror stories they've shared with me of their time in Toronto from the 60s till now. I would hear stories of how one of my grandmothers would get yelled at and spat on the streetcar. I heard stories of how they have to face discrimination in almost every facet of their days, even doing the most daily thing, most basic things like going to the store and not being able to be served until it's no one else is in the store around them. They told me about all these things they had to encounter, but always had the goal of being able to provide for their family back home, being able to work a job where they could send money and make sure that they could provide better than they could if they'd stayed in Jamaica. And they did well, they did okay, and then it went for about 10, 15 years of being here, and then the Immigration Act was passed in the 70s, and my grandmothers found themselves with the opportunity to sponsor their children so they could come to Canada and start their lives of their own. And that gave a bit of a leg up, and it gave, my parents' generation the ability to live lives slightly better, but not quite. So, there's only so far you can make it in Canada with limited access to education and funds. So my parents both came up separately. They didn't know each other at first. And they started jobs here. My dad as, I think he was a assistant manager of a long defunct pizzeria. And my mom was a data entry clerk. And they got some education and whatnot, but really there's only so far it takes you. And they use their wits, they use their skills and their connections and networks to secure things. They, got a house, they could raise a family in it, and they had the ability to do a little better than their parents were able to do. And I guess you could argue that they were able to work themselves into the middle class from where they started. They didn't really have a firm plan of what was going to go on. My dad used to have an Afro lambskin jacket and drive a Pontiac Firebird, and he totally traded down when he had me. But that's okay. I do not remind him of that every single time I see him. Totally not. I totally do. But this is the sacrifice he made to raise me, and I don't know. I think I look back on that and I'm just kind of like, I don't know, you had it good. But I'm digressing. So they worked hard to get there, but it wasn't without a price. Like, my dad eventually went to own a restaurant and had a staff, but he worked 6 days a week, 12 to 16-hour days in order to put a roof over our head and clothes on our back. My mom worked a job that gave her carpal tunnel syndrome and bad eyes and everything to make sure that we had, enough to pay for the swimming classes and everything we have to do in order to live fuller lives than they had. And our days began and ended at my grandmother's place. She was now remarried and staying at home. And we weren't able to spend a lot of our time with our parents growing up because they're busy trying to make sure that we could have everything we needed to take things farther, right? So they didn't have time. It's like having parents who don't have time to parent, and not in a bad way. Like their love and the way they saw things going for us was more of the, what can I do for you? Not being there, not necessarily any of that immaterial, emotional stuff that we tend to dwell on quite a bit these days. I have opinions that I won't share. But they were more about, what can I give you to do better? And I think they did pretty well. Like Clive and Althea Palmer were able to establish better lives for their children, and I think they did it. They're now, my parents are in a far different place now with us out of the house. Like, they're going out to Jamaica, like, in a few days, and they can travel and stuff, and, Sarah and I are there with our kids. Like, you should babysit sometimes. They're like, yeah, we're going by. But I love them nonetheless. But they wanted their children to take it farther. I know that my parents were not only ambitious for themselves, but also ambitious for us to make sure that we could do as best as possible with what they've given us. And I think the best way to describe it is that my parents worked very hard to make sure that my brothers and I would not be part of the struggle. So, it was evident from a young age that they would spare no expense and stop at nothing to make sure that we had every advantage possible to do well in life. My personal journey saw me go through French immersion, enhanced education, private school, and all these different things to make sure that I could stay ahead of the competition, as it were. And much of this was still in the 90s, where seeing black faces in the upper echelon of society was still super rare. Your rappers were from, like, the Bronx and wearing, like, really baggy jeans and hoodies, and your basketball players were good, but they weren't, like, around in, like, popping bottles and, like, expensive clothes and stuff like that. We're still very much trying to figure out our identity across the board, and while I didn't really appreciate it then, a huge part of my identity was tokenism, being the token guy, token black guy in almost every social circle I was in. And it's not something you actively think about at the age of like 12 or 13. But I look back on it now and I realize that in their own way, my parents, I guess, saw success as something countercultural to everything they experienced until that point, and they wanted to make sure that I was swimming in the right lanes in order to get to where they wanted me to be. That said, I am a minor disappointment. I did not become a doctor. And my mom will remind me all the time. She's like, I would have gone on my hands and knees and scrubbed every house in Toronto to send you to Harvard Medical School. And I was like, well, now you can keep your knees. So it worked out. We both win. But I think they knew, maybe not even explicitly, but somewhere within, that they wanted to see success beyond where we already were as a people. They saw, we do well in these areas. They saw that we represent ourselves in these social groups and cultural groups. So they wanted to go into other areas. And I think that their efforts weren't for naught. It's taken a while to figure out, what I'd like to do when I grow up. But I think my daily habit of writing has got me to a point where, things are happening. I've been able to travel and share my stories because of the thing I've been putting together over the last 15 years. I've been able to adventure. I've been able to do things and meet people I probably wouldn't be doing if I weren't, exposed to the experiences my parents gave me and had the advantages they made sure I had while growing up. I now have the ability to pursue my dreams, and I'm working hard to make sure that my kids don't have to work as hard to pursue theirs. And that is a luxury, I suppose you could say, that wasn't there for the generations before them. It's a very new thing that's available to them. And at 4 and 2, they're not going to appreciate it, at least for 20, 25. A long time. But I'm hoping that when the time comes to make those hard life decisions and figure out who they want to be, that it all kind of says, oh, that's why this all happened. This is, wishful thinking. I'm a parent of really young children, so I'm really idealistic. So there we go. All right. But let's bring it back to the present. As stated before, I am the voice behind Casey Palmer Canadian Dad, which is a dad blog about raising kids in the city and all the challenges, stories, and insights that come from it. In a space where there are very few dad bloggers, I can tell you pretty empirically that there are not more than a couple dozen dad bloggers across the country. It's a space where there's not many of us, and there's 2.5 million dads across Canada. For 24 dads who tell them that story is frightening. It's like you have this huge airplane, and it's yeah, we're gonna fly it. We don't know where we're going. No one knows the rules, and we're gonna go with it. And it's with the mom blogger community, they've got it down. They've got it structured. I've been to mom blogger conferences and talked to them. They're just yeah, here's the 12-step program. Here's the system. And it's I crack open a beer and try to write and see what happens. That is my method, and so far it's worked. But yeah, I'm pretty much the only dad blogger writing in Toronto, and if that's not true, I'm most definitely the only black one. I know that for sure. Without a doubt. And yeah, even with 2.5 million dads, if we assume the 3.5% of Canada that's black holds true for dads, that's still 85,000 black dads in Toronto. And how do I do that justice? How do you do that justice as one writer? How does a black guy from a ward that's less than 2% black cover all those insights and perspectives from across the city? I can't speak for the black people living on the city's fringes who have to commute 2 hours to work every day. I don't speak for black people from socioeconomic, educational, or cultural backgrounds that are necessarily different from my own. But I guess I'm in a position where I have to try. Black culture is the only culture, I know of, I think about this too all the time. I think it's the only culture that's so strongly defined by something that's not from a country, religion, or way of life. We have dozens of countries, multiple religions, and a multitude of languages, all basically together by the color of our skin. So can you imagine then, think of it like the Tower of Babel. You're trying to get everyone to go together and do one thing and live together and make sure we can all better it for all of us, but when you have 80,000 different perspectives in a city, it might not exactly be that easy. And we try though. We try. The world tries to simplify that culture into something simple. Black culture is this. Black music is this. Black style is this. And it's, what is it? Is it rocking fancy cars in the fly's clothes? Is it being able to shoot a three-pointer or freestyle on whatever the hot beat is at the moment? The world is trying to oversimplify what it means to be black, and that's something I realized that I have a responsibility to fight as a digital content creator, to take hold in the space and change the narrative, lest the narrative be told for us. So, in 2016, just a few days after our second son was born, I'm sorry, Sarah, I apologize, but I started Tales for the 2.9, which was Black Canadians sharing their stories in the digital space, and at this time, as Saba said, there 2.9% of the Canadian population identified as black. To put that in context, it wasn't necessarily enough to proportionally have an individual on the cabinet, because 2.9 is less than, I think it was about 3.6% to represent the split of how many people you had. We still got Ahmed Hussein, so I'm I'll take it, I'm running with it, thank you, boom. But also, it's not enough to really have a voice in the country we live in when we're such a small minority, and that is a problem. And I started the series out by interviewing different black Canadians I knew, and putting out their stories one by one with a set number of questions for each one. Keep it simple. And I wanted to illustrate that being black Canadian doesn't look like just one thing. And it went well. Somehow we got through the month, all of them got out, and it was happy, yay. I wanted to carry it on forward, but I had a million other things to do, so I was like, okay, 2016, you're good. Okay, let's move on. 2017 comes along, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That was good. How about we try it again? And 2017 blew up. 2017 was when it started getting featured in newspapers, and it was on TV and radio, and everyone was clawing at the door to start telling their stories, and I was like, I can do this, yeah, all right. And my team, little team of one, could manage all this. Yeah, okay. So 2017 was good. It was kind of like, it was good for the ego and good for, my self-esteem and being able to put something out that I thought people found was valuable, and the numbers would say that everyone thought it was a good series and much needed. And so I was like, okay, 2018 we're going to do it even bigger and better, but in 2018 is when I flew too close to the sun. So, 2016 and 2017 focused on individuals and taking care of their individual stories and building it into a large series. 2018 is when I sat down and thought, you know what? I think we can do better than that. I think instead of focusing on individuals, we can focus on the narratives and the themes that help to outline Black culture. We can focus on all the things that we face as a people and talk about everything from discrimination to style to where we came from to where we're going to the foster system, all these different things that, we have as narratives and don't get talked about nearly enough. And I wanted to do all that in 28 days. I wanted to do all that, considering there's all these other things going on in life. I'm like, I can do all this in a month. It'll be cool. Yeah, no. I hadn't factored in the fact that I had a dad conference in New Orleans to go to at the beginning of the month. I didn't factor in that I had to go speak in Kelowna, BC on parenting for a weekend. I didn't make room for the fact that our kids got sick for a week or so. And everything kind of piled up, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, look, it's February the 25th. How'd that happen? So, that said, that was the dawn of a realization for me in that Black history doesn't have to be just in February. We don't have to just focus on 1 month of putting out stories. There are 11 other months. That's a lot of time. 11 other months of basically it's like, are we just doing nothing one at a time? Yeah, it's like everything. February 28th, March 1st, okay. See you guys later. See you next February. Yeah. What I realized is that there's so much, I've seen so many stories, I've heard so much over time, and now I'm realizing that trying to capture all that in a month is not only bad for my sanity, but also just bad in general. I should do more to make sure that I can keep the story going over the months to come. And that's kind of the plan now, to take all that and be able to keep pursuing it in the months to come and having those conversations with people so that it's not just a flash in the pan, 1 month thing, and then we just do it all over again and never really grow from it. We need it to grow, to become something bigger. And that's what I'm hoping to do. Page 3. So, like I said, put out a few posts, and there's a lot of positivity there in the Black community, a lot of positivity that is in our narrative that we don't often get to share. I've gotten to meet a wonderful set of people from individuals doing great work in the communities where they're at to consulate generals who are just trying to get back to their roots and make sure that people understand that we're everywhere. We're not just in one place doing one thing. We reach broad spectrums of ability and insights and opinions, and we want to make sure we share them all. And so I've heard people refer to the entire idea of Black History Month as it stands right now being outdated, as in we've kind of grown past it, we've evolved past it. I've heard people refer to Black Future Month, Black Excellence Month. Other takes on Black History Month that help to promote the fact that we have a long path to go and so much to grow. And we need to focus on that rather than simply focus on where we came from. Of course, if you don't focus on, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But we can still grow with that in mind. And that's what I'm trying to do with Live from the 3.5. It's been off to a good start as I start writing these stories, and I just have to keep doing it. And then by the time we get to next February, I'm hoping this will be a very different talk where I'm probably more tired from telling stories all year, but a good tired where I felt that we all grew and learned from the experience at the same time. So, yeah, ultimately, there's still plenty of space in the digital realm to tell the Black Canadian narrative. I know right now that I'm one of the few doing it in that space, and I'm hoping to see it grow over time. But I intend to keep doing it over the months to come, and if you know anyone who's itching to tell their story, if you know parts of our country that are being grossly underserved, anywhere from Whitehorse to Moncton and back, let me know. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm ready. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
bonus points to anyone who understood all that as I spoke through my feelings at 100 words a minute. But it's important that we speak our stories aloud at times so we remember where we're from and maybe even learn where our paths will take us next. But that's one Black Canadian story down and another 1.195 million to go. And they're so diverse that they cross over every possible divide. Cultural, religious, socioeconomic. No two Black Canadians will answer what it's like to be Black in this nation in the same way. Hopefully this series can do a little bit of that justice. Being Black in the Great White North isn't always easy, but it doesn't need to be impossible either. With 35 years of experience under my belt, I'm still learning how to do it well, and with luck, I'll figure out how to teach my kids to walk the walk too. But till the next time, keep your head up and stay true to yourselves. No one's gonna do it for you. Bye-bye.